So the session is now being recorded. Let me go ahead and share Eclipse here. All right, I think you should be able to see my screen right now. So I'm going to start a new project. Let me call it course. And let me, I'm not too thorough with modules yet, so I'm not going to create one. So let me go ahead and create a class. Well, actually, I didn't mean the project name to be course. Let me change that project name. Refactor, rename. Okay. And let me call it example or something like that. It is very easy to change the names using Eclipse. Right click and then click refactor and rename. Okay. Let's create a class named course. And let me go ahead and put a couple of private string course ID. Private string course name. And let me generate the constructors and everything using Eclipse. So I got the constructor done. Let me get my setters and getters done. Those are created. Let me create toString. And finally, let me create hash code and equals. Let's say that two courses are equal if they have the same ID. So I'm going to not include course name as part of your equals. So generate. So I got all these generated. Some of you might be a little confused with respect to equals. What I am going to talk about is this. The equals is a way of comparing two objects. I am the designer of this class course, and I get to decide when two courses are equal. And I decided that two courses are equal if they have the same ID. That is my decision, all right? I get to decide that because this is my design. So the equals method should be doing the following. If the two references are the same, so you are comparing two course objects, hopefully, and this is one of the two course objects. The other course object is passed as a parameter here, and if they are pointing to the same object, then they are obviously equal. If the parameter is null, if you get a null reference to be compared against a course object, then they cannot be equal, so I return false. If this course object obj, I don't like the name, you should change this to object. So refactor, rename, and let me change that to object. Okay. Give me a second. Let me check if there are any people waiting in the waiting room. Give me 1 second.
Say, Professor, I have a question about something you did.
Yeah, sure.
So when I generate equals
Uh-huh.
by doing source and then generate override implement methods. Mine just comes up with a retune super dot equals. Is there a setting that you have to
Yeah,
generate all that code?
right. That may be that you should generate. What am I doing? Source hash code and equals. Yeah, right. You need to check all these things that suppose I didn't check these, then I don't know what happens. I never did it that way. So actually, it doesn't let me generate anything at all. So I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe we can sort it out in a separate Zoom session.
Okay, that's fine.
Maybe when you are done with your class exercise, at that point, we could, assuming we are not in a great rush with any other group, we can uh, do it offline. Offline
Yep,
meaning separately. Okay.
that sounds good. I'd rather not
Yeah.
burn class
Okay.
time.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. And you should also make sure that you put braces around these things. Otherwise, you will lose some points. Okay.
Option to do that automatically when you set the equals method.
I'm sorry.
I think there's also an option to select for the if statements to automatically have those in
Ye-
in the
it-
setters.
yeah, possibly. I think I don't remember. I mean, I haven't really investigated much into that. If you could tell me at some point how to do that, I would be very pleased to convey that to the whole class. I think there is a way, there is a file where you can actually specify the formatting
It
requirements.
was one of the options just to select when you're creating them. There was one of the options down there to select it.
Oh, I see. Okay. When you create the equals, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I will look at it next time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, then I would highly suggest that you do it that way rather than uh, what I am doing right now with manual. Um, oops, I think I haven't set. Oops. Okay. And you need to keep on doing all this in this case at this point. And if the two, I mean, get class is of course the course class. This dot get class, that is course, and object.get class should also be course. That is a class name or the class object. They should both be the same. You can't compare apples and oranges. So you need to compare course against course. That is what we are checking here. Now at this point, you are confident in line 53. By the time you get to line 53, you have verified that object is not null and it is a course object. So you can confidently cast the incoming object as a course object, course reference, and now you can check whether the two course IDs are the same. These are string fields. You can use equals on that, so you'll be actually um, transferring control to the toString method of the string class. And we don't care how it carries out its comparison. It will come back with true or false, and then we are done. One important thing, if you are confused about this, at least in the other section, there were some students who were confused about uh, this comparison because they wondered whether we need to use get ID, get course ID, or some such getter. There is no need. Other is a course object, right? It has the field course ID. It is private, but we are in the course class. So this dot course ID or other dot course ID are all accessible from here. So we are um, okay with that kind of access. So that takes care of the equals. Now let's talk about creating a driver for this All right. Now, what I would do is create a driver. Oops. And normally, I think many of you would probably be doing it this way. You could create a course object, new course, ICS 372, or design, or some such thing. Okay, and you would write system.out.println, system.out.println c1.get course name. Oops. This is a very simple test, nowhere near adequate, but let's see. So if you run this little test, you can look at the output and then see that we have OO design here. We gave the name OO design as a course name. So this seems to be working. The constructor seems to work as well as the getter. So that could be our conclusion. But and we can continue with this kind of system.out.println. We can call the setters, we can call equals, etc., etc. But the difficulty with this kind of test is the following. What is that difficulty? I have to match the output, which is OO design, with what I passed as a parameter here. Of course, I wrote this just a few seconds ago. I know exactly that I passed OO design and I'm getting OO design here at the output. I know that they match. But a week from today, I would have forgotten that. And it is not just one line that I'll be having. I'll be having in a complicated class maybe 100 lines. And I wouldn't know, I mean, among all these lines, which one is correct and which one is not. I have to keep matching. And that is a pain in the neck. Uh, it is actually discouraging you from testing. So one way of avoiding that is to use something like JUnit, which is not what I'm going to cover. In case, instead, I am going to get rid of this completely and do something else. I'm going to have a string array, names, and I'm not going to use things like very long course names or anything of that kind. I'm going to use course names like N1, comma, oops, N2, N3, and so on. Let me stop with 3. And I will have an array of IDs equals I1, comma, I2, comma, I3. I don't really need to make really long course names or IDs to do my testing for the most part. So I'm only going to have very short course names and IDs. And I will also have a course array, new course. Okay, what is the plan? I will create 3 courses. First one will have the name N1 and the ID I1. Second one will have the name N2, ID I2. Third one will be having the name N3 and ID I3. So I'm going to have 3 things here, but I don't want to hard code 3. Instead, I would write names dot length so that if I add more names and IDs, this will be adjusted accordingly. And here I am going to have int index equals 0, index less than courses dot length, index plus plus. I'm going to create all my courses. I'm going to create the 3 courses in this loop. Courses index equals new course, names index, comma, names. Sorry, I think it is name and ID, IDs index. So I'm picking each name and ID and passing it to the course constructor and storing the resulting course object in this array. Now, I need to make sure that courses 0 dot get, let's see here, dot get, why is it not, maybe I have some, wonder why I'm not getting the correct prompts. Courses 0 dot maybe something isn't right. Anyway, let me try this. Maybe I'm making some mistakes here. Equals names 0. This is not a correct statement, but what I am trying to imply here is that the name of the first course should be equal to the name here. If it is not, something is wrong. So you can put the word assert and put a semicolon here. I still have a problem. What is that? Oh, it is not it may be course name. Get course name. Yeah, that is all. All right. So assert is a Java operator that checks whether a condition is true. If the condition is true, then Java lets it alone. If the condition is false, Java crashes the program there with an exception. That is what happens. So what we need to do is basically run this program. But before running it, I need to do one thing. I need to go and create a run configuration, and I create a new run configuration. And here in arguments, I need to write minus EA. EA means enable assertions, and apply this and run. Oh, I do have a problem. Why should there be a problem? Maybe ID is the first one. Let me check. Yeah, ID should have been the first one. I passed. The test itself was wrong, So that is why the assertion didn't work out. I should have passed it the other way. So that was caught. Now let's run this again. Now it didn't crash. So I could conclude that the constructor and the get method both are working, unless they compensated each other with errors, which I hope is not the case, right? What is the advantage of this? Once I write this test, I can run this again and again without having to look at any output and do some complicated and time consuming matching. It doesn't take any more time to write statements using the assert operator or the assert statement, whatever that is. Instead of doing system.out.println, you just write assert and make sure that what you are going to display in the system.out.println is actually what you are going to match. That is the thing, So this is a preferred way of doing it. You will be less discouraged from not doing testing. Otherwise, testing is a pain. Comparing all the outputs against what the program is printing out. This you can keep reusing as you make changes. You can get things done much more quickly. So I would encourage you to do this. And in the first group project, I will ask that you do at least part of the testing using assertions. Any questions on this? Right. The second thing I wanted to talk about was Java FX. So the second programming assignment asks you to create a Java FX program, and Java FX has to be downloaded separately. So if you go to the D2L site and look at the reading assignments, one thing you need to read starting tomorrow is this document, GUI Basics. And if you go here at the bottom of this, there's a bunch of examples here which you can study. And I think project 5 here, where is it? Project 4. Project 5 is probably going to be the most useful one as far as your second programming assignment is concerned. And at the very end of this document, there is a website that you can go to, openjfx.io. You can also go to that site by searching, Java FX download or some such thing. So you can get that and you download Java FX from there. And there is an installation process that you have to go through, and there is documentation for it. I can see two versions of Java FX. One is 11, the other one is 15. There may be other things that you can get from the web, but I don't know where they are. They used to be available, but I can't see them anymore. The Windows version is here. Get the SDK, not the JMods, right? So download the SDK for Windows, or download the SDK for Mac if you have a Mac, or Linux is here. Then you need to install this, as I said. For that, I wonder where the documentation is at this point. So let me go ahead and search for it. FX, Eclipse, installation. Yeah. Let's see here. So here is the documentation. What you need to, actually that document here, this reference is, this URL is for the documentation, not for the download. This is the documentation to see how to install it. So, and to install JavaFX for Eclipse, click here and follow the directions very carefully. Okay, you want to do it for non-modular projects, and there are separate instructions for Windows as well as Linux. So if you click here, you get the Windows thing, otherwise you get the Linux. It is a bit of a pain, but you will get used to it. And let me assure you, this stuff works. All right. So when I installed it the first time, I made some mistakes and it wasn't working. Then I started doubting whether this document is incorrect. But then I told myself, look, if you make that assumption, then there is nothing more to do, right? And since this is going to be used by so many people, I just believed that document and followed this again very carefully, and everything worked out quite well. So that is Java FX. I highly recommend that you start working on this tomorrow, because it takes a while to get everything set up. You don't want to be dealing with those technical issues as you are doing your assignment. Uh, That shouldn't be impeding your progress. That's what I'm trying to say. Any questions? Okay, let me stop sharing here. Any questions on anything that we have covered so far? Okay, let me go ahead and then stop the recording. There is a little thing that I need to do with the class exercise before I open it up for you. So give me a couple of minutes to work on that. And before that, let me go ahead and stop recording.